Hello. Not sure if anyone's here yet or not, but it is 1:30. Hopefully you're out of bed on the day before you go back to school. But so the purpose of this stream is just to go through some of the key points you've highlighted as part of the upcoming exam you've got next week. So your exam is the 10th of January, which is next Monday in the afternoon. So for anyone who's not a morning person, that might be a benefit to you. And I'm just going to show you now what I have got planned for this session. So these are the highlighted areas as per my Year 11 group. So you have them to thank if this is not appropriate for you. We're going to cover file formats, legislation, health and safety, scripts, work plans, target audience, and of course that dreaded 12-mark question. Now, if there's anything else you'd like to cover that isn't on this list, do let me know. The whole point of the live stream is that it's to be led by you guys. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, before we get into this, I just wanted to go through the actual exam itself. Now, I appreciate for some people, this will be the first time that you have sat this exam. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about it. So I've got a web browser open up here. Now, you can actually access the exam papers yourself. You know, I've got to pay for them. Some of them are locked down, but not all of them. So let me show you the question papers. So here are, going back to 2017, the exam papers for R081. Now, there's 2 of those per year, so June and January. Don't know why there's a November one there. That must have been a one-off. And you can access these completely free. They're not locked down. Question papers there. Mark schemes there in a lot of cases too. And this is a really great way of revising for the exam. So I've got one open, which I'm just going to talk you through. So here is the one from June 2018. Now, it's like any other exam paper. It is paper-based, so it's not based on a computer. And it is worth 60 marks. It's an hour and 15 minutes. And it is worth 25% of the course. So as you'll probably know, 75% is coursework, 3 coursework units, and 25% is the exam. Now, some of you may have been given a teacher assessed grade last year for this, because of obviously the whole lockdown situation. And some of you will also have dropped coursework units due to the fact that we were missing a lot of school. And as you'll see, there's lots of different questions. You've got some that are based on identifying items and purposes, and you'll have some that involve a little bit more work from you. So like this one's a mood board, for example. You've got one here where you've got to analyse the script. And lastly, you'll always have the very last question will be this 12-mark question. And we're going to come on to this in a minute. So without further ado, let's get going back onto my analysing. So we're going to start with file formats. Now, file formats are a bit of a difficult one to talk about here, but broadly, you're going to be asked, or could be asked, about any of these 4 categories. File formats to do with images, file formats to do with video, file formats to do with audio, and file format to do with animation. And I've put along the bottom here, compression. Now, I am going to attempt to write today with my pencil. I've got a graphics tablet on here. I'm rubbish at using a graphics tablet, so I'll probably give up after the first couple of minutes because I'm a left-handed person who writes upside down, and these things aren't generally designed for me. But let's start with images. See, already it's starting to go a bit wonky, so I might just end up typing in the end. So images. Okay, so typically with all of these, you can break them down into 2 things, and that can be, I'm just going to type. That can be whether they're going to be used on a web-based or online, or whether they're going to be used for printing in the case of images, but also it could be hosted on like a computer or something like that. So you haven't got to stream over the internet. So I'm going to put printed or like hosted on a computer. And this will determine what file type or file format we use on here. So we've got computer here. There we go. Oh, still can't spell computer. Computer. There we are. So I've got too many things on here. Okay, so in terms of images, web and online, you guys will know this. It's the typical one that you tend to use most of the time. You've got your JPEG, okay? So JPEG is the most typical web online file format. It's used for great for images. So any photos you take on your phone will typically be stored as a JPEG because they are a relatively small file size. They're easy to share and they're easy to download. So nice and quick to use. You may also have one called a PNG. Now, PNGs are portable network graphic. The advantage of these ones over JPEGs is that it supports what's known as transparency. So what that means is that the background, so say for example this logo at the bottom here, the background can be transparent, which means that you can place it over other items. And it's really good for things like logos or like shapes, if anything you want to put over a different background. And that's the case where you might want to use a PNG instead of a JPEG. So if you're doing a logo, for example. You've also got things such as GIFs. Now, you may know GIFs as our lovely little animated friends. In fact, I think on here you can insert GIFs. I'm not sure, but let me go to Google. So let's search for like an animated GIF. Here we go. We all know animated GIFs. There's lovely little Homer. So GIFs, as you can tell, are an image file format, but they're also an animation file format, and they are used traditionally for low kind of quality files. Now, the limitation with these is they can only support up to 256 colors, so it's not good for anything that you want that's got lots of colors in it. So that's a limitation that you have with GIFs. And these are typically the three you'll be looking at if you're looking at online images or ones for the web. How you would use them, again, depends on what. So like I say, JPEG, 9 times out of 10 will be the one you'll use for your online images. If you've got a logo, maybe PNG. If you want some animation, again, or a transparent background, you might choose GIF. But again, with GIF, the limitation on that one is the colours. Now, in printed, hosted on a computer, anyone who's done R082 might have an idea on this one, because 9 times out of 10 for this one. I think I'm going to move my graphics tablet out of the way in a minute. Right, come on, let me draw a box. Oh dear, it's not letting me draw a box now. There we go. The wonders of live internet. Oh, there's a pigeon outside my door. Okay, so the typical one you have for use on a printed is going to be a TIFF. The reason we use TIFF is that it's a very high quality file format, and the reason that's important is because when you're printing something, you don't really care about it loading quickly. So whereas where it's a web or online, you want it to load quickly, it needs to be able to be transferred quickly, whereas when you're printing something, you want the quality, you want the highest notch quality, because there's nothing worse than having a ginormous poster advertising your brand only for it to be pixelated, and that's where a TIFF file comes in. So generally it will be used for printing lovely like color posters example. You might use something like a PDF. That's a good combination of text and images. It's a little bit trickier to edit though, and typically I'll put it on this list anyway. PDF. There we go. So those will be your typical ones for when you're hosting on a computer. So I'm going to move this over here. So these are all together. So these are image types. Now, if you want to find out a little bit more about this, I have got my animated GIFs in the background. Let me go over here. I've got the textbook, and the textbook's got some details about the typical file formats you've got here. So you've got JPEGs, PNGs, TIFF, PDFs and GIFs. Now they're all going to have pros and cons depending on what they are. So you've got obviously JPEG has got reduced image quality when you compress it a little bit more, and we'll come on to compression in a minute. PNG, again, that transparent background and a good alternative to GIFs. TIFFs is your high quality, lossless compression, which again we'll come back to in a minute. PDF is difficult to edit, but again can use text and images together. And lastly, obviously, you've got GIFs, which is small file sizes with a nice transparent background, but limited colours. And there are some licensing issues as well. So that's typically it when it comes to images. I'm going to leave these on here now. What I'll do is I'll share a link to this at the end of the stream so you guys can use it as you need to. Now let's move on to video. Come on, let me move this. There we go. Whoopsie. So for video, again, it all depends whether you're going to have that video streaming. So think about like your Netflix, for example, or even YouTube, for example. You need to have a fine balance between a high quality file and something that's not going to buffer every 30 seconds or so. So you want to make sure you've got a reasonably good file type. And again, for this case, when we're streaming video or we've got something that's going to be posted on the web, you're going to be looking at an MP4. My goodness, that didn't type very well at all, did it? It's because I've got this graphics thing in the way. Right, come on. 2 objects were grouped. I don't know what I'm grouping. Delete. There we go. Right, let's try and type that again, shall we? MP4. There you go. So MP4 is your typical video file format. And the reason we use this one again is because the compression allows it to stream quicker. So you've got a smaller file size, but also reasonably good quality. So MP4 is your typical one you're going to use for that. And again, I'm going to bring you over to here. No, I put audio first. Let's go on to video. And again, it's got this nice little table here where it tells you about those different types. So you've got your MP4, you've got your MOV. This was originally an Apple file format actually, but it's now used a little bit more widely. Your AVI, now that is the one that's where it's going to be stored on your computer. So if you are storing something like that's going to be shown on a device that's stored like on a computer or a hard drive, so you haven't got to worry about streaming over internet, then quality is going to be your important thing. So this is going to be your movies, things that are like, you know, shown in, you know, film theaters and stuff like that. So you want the highest quality you can get. And you've also got FLV here, not as well known, but this one can serve as both a video and an animation file format, so that's a good one to use. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to use my magical print screen button. I'm actually going to put a copy of this table into the document we are working on so that you guys can have a look at that afterwards. Oh dear, no, okay, there we go, paste it in. Oh my goodness gracious me. Right, done. Here we go. Oh my goodness, it's huge. Make that a little bit smaller, shall we? Thank you, thank you. Right, okay, pop that there. Audio works pretty much the same way. So in audio, you've got your music here. So you've got things such as your Spotify, your Amazon Music, anything that's going to be streamed over the internet. You want to sacrifice a little bit of the quality so that you can make sure that the file size is smaller when it comes to actually listening to it. Because again, you don't want to be listening to your music buffering every few seconds. So again, typically for this one, when you're viewing it or streaming it over the internet, you're going to have MP3s, the most commonly known audio file format, but there are a few more to know about, and let's have a look at them in this document here. So scrolling back up, MP3, it's our compressed file format. It allows you to stream over the internet, and it's good, widely supported. You're not going to have any hiccups using it. Then you have got WAV. Now WAV is your high quality one, so the AVI version, the TIFF version of these file formats. Now WAV is what you're going to use if you are a music producer or you've got your own sort of like system set up where you're storing your music files, and the quality is the most important thing. And this is where you would use a WAV file format. So typically in an exam, you're going to want to know an example of each of these types of file formats, one suitable for the web or online and one suitable for print or like hard drive distribution, etc, etc, because that's typically what your questions are going to be like. And the last thing I mentioned at the bottom here is compression. Now compression, you can literally think of it as trying to compress or squeeze something down. Now all of these files have or not all of them, but most of these files will have the option of being compressed. And this is where you make the file smaller to reduce the quality of it. However, that means that the file size is smaller, meaning it's easier to distribute online and obviously to stream. So let me again do a little, I'm going to do it by a text block again because I cannot use this graphics tablet as predicted. So you have got two types, lossy versus lossless. So let's talk about the first one first. Now lossy is where you reduce the size of the file, and when you do that, you chuck away some of that information or the data on the file. So for example, in an image, it might be some of the pixels in the picture. If it was for video audio, it could be some of the waves in the audio. It could be some of that quality in the picture. Essentially, what you're doing is you're making the file size smaller, and that's what compression is all about. And the reason we do this, you might think, well, what's the point of that? It's obviously the reason I said earlier, where you have a smaller file size to make it easier to distribute and to make it easier to stream. Now, obviously, in some cases, you don't want to compress your file. So this is where you do have your image that's going to be printed, your video that's going to be stored on like a hard drive somewhere, your audio, etc. So in these cases, compression wouldn't be a thing you need to worry about. But if you are distributing it online, then compression is something you need to look at. So lossy, I keep saying lossy is the one where you're going to reduce the file size, but you're also going to chuck away a little bit of the data there, and you can't get that back. And the reason you choose that one is it just allows you to have a slightly smaller file size. So this is really good when obviously the most important thing to you is obviously having that smaller file size and transferring it. Lossless on the other hand, now this one sort of shrinks it down. You can almost think of it like your pin particles in Ant-Man, but it allows you to restore it back to its original size, and that's why it's called lossless. So you kind of get it back again afterwards. I know it's quite difficult to remember the two. There is a chance you'll get asked a question on this in the exam, so it is important to know about the difference between the two. So on that note, let's have a look at an exam question, shall we? So this is a typical exam question. This is taken from one of the exams. So Words on the Planet is a new conservation campaign with the purpose of increasing the awareness of environmental issues that are faced by our planet. The campaign is targeted at a wide target audience between the ages of 12 and 50, and they're going to use a variety of media to raise awareness. So here's our question. A series of digital graphics will be created to promote the campaign. Identify the most suitable file format for each of the digital graphics. So this is graphics, okay? And you're just going to explain why. So the first one here is a printed poster. Keyword here being printed, keyword here being quality, okay? Now, if you remember from that previous slide, I said to you that the best one to use in this case would be a TIFF. Now, some of you might have an intricate knowledge of these sort of things like graphics. That's fine. Just don't overcomplicate it. If you know the answer, there's no need to go above and beyond what you need to. Okay. Look at the marks on this one. So this would be a mark for this and then 2 marks for the justification. Now, your justification here, don't just say it's better file size or it's a good file size. You need to actually explain to the examiners that you know what you're talking about. So I'm going to draw another box here. These boxes do not like drawing for me. Right, let's try again. There we go. Your justification here is because it is a high quality file type that will produce a high quality printed image, and that would be enough for this. Okay, so and then you've got the same question again, but this time with your web graphic. And again, for this one you could use JPEG, you could use PNG, either would be fine. So you could I'm not very good at drawing these boxes, am I? Right, I think there we go. I'll get there eventually. Okay, so we've got JPEG. Now JPEG, you might say, because it uses lossy compression, which means that the file size will be smaller, which means that it will be able to load quickly. Let me do this again. There must be a quick way to do this. I'm being terribly unsavvy here. So it uses lossy compression, which provides a small file. Oh gosh, I need to move this up. Let me move this up here a little bit for you. Which uses a smaller file size, ideal for transferring over. I can't spell again. Over the internet. You might also say PNG, and you might say the fact that that supports a transparent background, which might be handy when you're creating an image for the web. So any of that. So this question is typically testing your knowledge of the file formats and how they work. And this could be replaced with a question about video file formats and about audio file formats, but it'll always be along that same thing. There'll always be a something in the question which will give you a prompt as to whether it's a web or an online based one. So hopefully that's helped a little bit with file formats. I'm just going to check see if I put a second question in there. I did put a second question in there. Okay, so this one is asking you about videos. So it's got here that Three Oaks are launching a summer bank holiday sale, and it'll be offering discounts on its summer sun products. You've been asked to develop pre-production documents. A short video will be created and used as a pop-up advert on various websites. So let me get my highlighter out here. This here is your keyword here, websites. Okay, so we know that this video file format needs to be suitable for going onto a website. So I'm going to suggest that we use an MP4 file format. And the reasons being, or not MP dollar, the reasons being, go back on here again. There we go. So the reason being, it uses lossy compression to give a smaller, oh god, I really can't spell, I swear my keyboard's lagging, a smaller file format, which means it will be easier to load on the website. And there you go. So this is exactly the same sort of question as the image one, but this time for a video file format. And there'll always be a clue on these about whether it's going to be a web-based or a printed-based. I'm just going to see if I've got one more on here. I don't think I did put one more on here. Let's have a look. No. Okay, so that's our file formats done. If you've got any questions about the file formats, please do feel free to leave a comment. Come back to that one at the end. But let's move on to legislation. Now, legislation is always a bit of a headache when it comes to this. But typically, I've grouped it into the categories you need to know. So copyright. Copyright is automatic. You do not need to apply for it. So any images that you create, or any videos you create, or audio you create, automatically belongs to you. You don't have to apply for it. It's yours. And if you want to use somebody's image, so say for example, I'm creating a let's say I'm creating a poster for a supermarket, and I want to use a picture that's been created by someone else, that's just like a stock photo. I would need to ask permission, or I would need to, or I might have to pay a fee to use that image. Now that doesn't mean that I now own the copyright to it. The copyright still belongs to the copyright holder, but I've got permission to use it, and that's the most important thing in these situations. And we'll kind of come on to that a little bit more when you do R082 if you've not already done it. But in terms of the exam, you just need to be aware that copyright automatically belongs to the holder, and that if you want to use a copyrighted image, you need to either pay a fee or ask permission. I'm just going to write this down on here as well, just so you've got it here. So you need to pay a fee and or ask permission. I'm a clicky M today. Ask permission to use. There we go. Don't know why it's gone. Okay. To use a copyrighted media product. Okay, so Creative Commons. Now, Creative Commons is a little bit different. It's still... Oh my goodness, I've just undone that. What did I just do? That was very silly of me. I'll come back to that one in a minute. Let's come back to that in a minute. I don't know what I'm doing, really, honestly. Right, Creative Commons. Now, this is a set of licenses that essentially still means that the copyright belongs to the copyright holder, but instead of you having to ask permission to use it, they have a set of licenses, which means that you can use it for certain purposes. And in terms of iMedia and R081, you need to know about the fact that there's two types that you need to know about. There's a lot of them, but for the sake of iMedia, there are two types you need to know about. And let me show you what they are. Not compression. Oh, it's on here somewhere. Might be a bit further up. Let's go back up. Whee! So much stuff on here. Maybe it's not on here. Okay, I'm lying. Okay, well, what it is you need to know about is CC-BY. And CC-BY means that you can use it. Let me just put the copyright. Ask permission and or pay a fee. Okay, so let's go back onto text. So CC-BY, and that means that you can use it how you like. So you can use it commercially, use how you like, but you need to give what's the word? I mention to the owner. I can't think of the actual official word. They need to give. What's the word I'm trying to think of? Can't think of it. But yes, you basically need to say that you have got permission from you. So you're using it and you say who the author is. Have to give. I can't think of the damn word. I'll come back to it. Yeah, okay, that's fine. You have to give. I'm trying to credit. That's it. Thank you. Goodness me. I don't know what's wrong with my brain today. And then you've got CC by NC. Now this one's similar. However, in this case, you can't use it commercially. So, for example, in an educational setting, or if you're doing something for fun, or like some fan art or something like that, then you can use it for that. But you can't use it. Use how you like. But not commercially. So for commercially, you can't make any money off of it. Now you still again don't own the copyright for this one. Royalty free. Now royalty free, these are things like your Unsplash sites or your Pexels. Now I don't know if any of you have used the, obviously I know kids from my school have used these, but Pexels and Unsplash are great sources of images that are royalty free. Now, a lot of people think royalty free means copyright free and that they can use them how they like. That is not the case. Royalty free just means that you do not have to pay a royalty or a fee to use them. So the people who took the photos, and you'll see if you go into one of these, it'll tell you who the author is. So we know that this belongs to Lisa. There we go. So if we use this, we don't actually have to give any attribution to her. So we don't have to say it's Lisa's, but it still belongs to Lisa. So we can then claim that that's our photo after we've used it. But we can use it for free. And that's really useful, which is why we use it quite a lot in R082. So royalty free means that you can use it. We'll put it here. Use media how you like, but don't have to pay a fee. Oh gosh. Now, in terms of copyright, you can a person can transfer copyright over to you. So, for example, if they decide that, you know, if you've done some work for a company, you might decide to transfer the ownership over to them, and it also expires after a certain amount of time. And typically, I think in the UK that's after 100 years. You don't need to know this for the exam. So you might find, for example, that old books, so like Alice in Wonderland, and I think Winnie the Pooh this year comes into public domain. That's what it's known as. So it comes into the public domain, which means that anyone can use it how they like to. So so stuff does become copyright free after a certain amount of time, but you can transfer it if you want to. Now, I'm going to touch very briefly on libel, slander and defamation. I've not seen it come up in an exam before, but you never know. Essentially what this means is that you can't say things or write things or post things about somebody else that aren't true, because you'll get in trouble for it, which is obviously self-explanatory, but there you go. So that's essentially what that is. So it's just being mindful of what you post or say about somebody and making sure. You may have heard in the news about newspapers, you have to pay damages to people when they post things that aren't true. That's essentially what this is mean. What it means. So it's just being aware of it and being professional at all times, because obviously the whole point of this exam and the whole course is putting you in a position where you might be a graphic designer of some sort, and being aware of what's kind of the law. We're going to move on briefly to certification and classification. Now I'm going to move zoom out a little bit on these. Oh gosh, that didn't work very well, did it? I'm not going to zoom out on these after all. We messed it up now. Oh dear. Wow, that's very zoomed in. I'm just gonna leave it where it is. Just gonna leave it here. So what I was gonna do was just do a little zoom out at the bottom, but I thought this might stay with it, but it doesn't. So certification and classification. Now, certification is for films. So this is where you have got your BBFC, and I'm gonna write this on the side here. So the BBFC is the British Board of Film Classification, I think, off the top of my head. And there you have got your classifications of use, so universal, you've got PG, you've got 12A, you've got 15, and you have got 18. And essentially all this is you being aware of how films have to be classified depending on the content. So it could be to do with drugs or drink, it could be to do with violence, gambling, etc. And classification is the same but with games, and you will know that as the PEGI rating, which is the Pan-European Gaming something. I don't know if anyone knows what the I stands for. Let me Google. PEGI is the Pan-European Game Information. There we go. So, and that is a way of ranking games in a similar way. So, and it tends to be on the same format. So it tends to be based on violence and drugs. And I think these ones you've got 3. What have we got on here? 3, 7, 12, 16, and 18. 3, 7, 12, 16. And 18. So this, how this might present itself in an exam is that you might have to, for example, say what might you need to consider about the content of the films for the target audience or something like that. So it might not, you wouldn't necessarily need to, like, obviously you're not going to watch anything in the exam, but it's just being aware of content and how that might affect the age rating of an exam. And then very lastly, we're going to just crack on with data protection very quickly. It's a bit of a dry topic, but essentially what this means for you is that you have a responsibility to look after any data that you collect on people. So for example, if you were to have staff working for you or actors and you store their personal information, you have to make sure that it's kept safe and secure. And this is what is known as the Data Protection Act. You may also know about it as the GDPR as well. So let me just pop this down here. So I'm going to put the Data Protection Act and GDPR. So again, let's have a look at a question for how this might look in our thing. So here's a legislation question here. Kids 5 a Day campaign will be supported by a number of food retailers and their logos will be included on the stickers and posters. Describe one step that must be taken by the publishers to allow these logos to be included. And again, this is just you checking your understanding here. Great advice for these exams is to make sure that you mention as much of the scenario in there that you want to. So I might say, for example, kids 5 a day will, oh god, I don't know why I can't spell today, will need to contact the publishers, the companies who own the logo to seek permission to use it and might have to pay a fee. So in this case, you would get a mark if you mention seek permission, and you'd also get a mark if you mention pay a fee as well. One implication for the publishers if this step is not taken. So if you do go ahead and use something, you could, bearing in mind that this is for the publisher, so it's going to be in a commercial context here. So it's not like you're like a little kind of, you know, gosh, a bird just made me jump there. You're not like a fangirl who's just sort of like doing stuff for you know, fan art. That's fine. You might get a cease and desist letter, which means you stop using it, but generally you're going to be okay. In a commercial sense, however, this gets a little bit more problematic. So you may have to stop the campaign. Yes, I'm tapping the text. Why are you not letting me edit it? Honestly, this is more problematic than I thought it was going to be. Right. Oh, goodness me. There we go. Thank you. Right. So you may have to pay a fee to the logo or to the companies. Oh my goodness, what's up with my M? Who own the logos? You may have to stop using the posters and stickers. And you might get fined or prosecuted. Now you don't have to do all of these. Prosecuted. There we go. By the companies. Now you don't have to write all of these. It's only a 2-mark question, but you'll basically need to say what will happen in there for this one. So this is a typical legislation question, and there is generally going to be one of these in your exam at some point. It could be about using logos, or it could be anything else, but there will be something about legislation in your exam. So let's move on now to health and safety. So again, if you've got any questions about legislation, please do feel free to leave it in the comments. I see there's a couple of comments on there, but we'll carry on now. So health and safety. Again, you will typically get a question on this in the exam, and typically it will be in the form of, tell me one thing to be aware of when in this scenario when someone's using a computer and how they could get around it. So first of all, working with computers. I'm going to get my text box ready again. Now, when working with computers, typically this is going to be things such as repetitive strain injury. So this is where people get wrist injuries. Might be known as RSI. You've got eye strain, back strain, etc. And so these are things to be aware of. Now, things you can say, because again in the exam they're probably going to ask you to talk about ways you can mitigate this. Let me make this text a bit smaller. Okay, I thought it might do it automatically, but maybe not. Whoa. Let's there we go. So things to mitigate this. Repetitive strain injury is taking regular breaks and check posture and position of keyboards. Oh my goodness, it's gone right off the screen, isn't it? So all of these things are a little bit of common sense, really. You know, eye strain, take regular breaks. Make sure that your is correct height and distance. And back strain, again, use a suitable chair. So you don't want to be like sat somewhere uncomfortable. Make sure your backrest is set up properly. So anything like that, really. So this is a typical question you'll get in an exam about this. I'll come back to that question in a second. So, right, working from heights. And now this is more in the production side of things. So obviously, this isn't going to be the people making like the mind maps and that, because generally you don't do that from great heights. But this will be thinking of your camera crew, lighting crew, for example. So when working from heights, things to be aware of are... This thing really does not like me, does it? Okay, don't know why it's just got rid of all my stuff, but there we go. Please let me draw a box. So this is going to be dropping things and also securing things so that they don't get dropped. So what you need to do, make sure in this case, is that making sure you're using a ladder, making sure that there's someone there to hold things when you're securing them, and making sure that the area like around things that could drop is like boarded off. So for example, if there's a risk of something falling, make sure you cordon off the area around it so that it doesn't get dropped on them. Working with electricity, again, hopefully we all know this from when we were younger and we learn about how not, what to do with electricity. But typically, oh my goodness, this thing is a pain in the backside. Typically, this is going to include making sure, oh my goodness me, making sure cables are covered up and not trip hazard. Making sure things are kept waterproof. Now this is really useful obviously if you're filming. Let's say you're filming in an old church or something like that. Obviously these places tend to be prone to leaking, so just making sure that the area is waterproof and cables are kept covered up and got like protective coverings on them, etc, etc. And obviously you've got things like not having liquids around the electrical components. There we go, put that over there. And then lastly, we've got working with heavy equipment. And again, all of these are quite self-explanatory in terms of what they are. So when you're lifting heavy equipment, make sure that you use 2 people if necessary. So don't strain your back. Make sure 2 or more people you lift heavy items together, and things like that. So it's just making sure really that you're sensible when you don't want to kind of like drag something, twist yourself and hurt yourself, because obviously as you get older and if you are running a company, then you will be liable for those injuries, and typically there'll be training that would be undertaken, etc. in these cases. So let's have a look at a typical exam question here. So we've got MVTion here, who are releasing a new comic and internet-based animation series focusing on a character called Velocity Girl. She has the ability to move fast in water and on land. Describe 2 health and safety issues that should be considered when the animators are using computers. Okay, so this, I'll go back to my highlighter here. So this is focusing on the animators who are using the computers. So this is our using computers one. And it just tells us what should be considered. So it doesn't necessarily tell us how to mitigate it, but just 2 things that could be considered. So in this case, what we could do is we could... it's going to go on here. We're going to say make sure that the animators, because we want to mention a scenario in there, are keep their eyes level with the monitor and are using it at a safe distance to prevent eye strain. So we need to put in there what the actual thing is that might need to be worried about. And then lastly, make sure to take regular breaks and use a sensible chair to prevent back strain. And you could do RSI, you could do fatigue, for example, anything like that. Some people, I know my year 11s are prone to going into some sort of like quite niche things such as like epilepsy and diabetes. That's too niche for this. Think about general things that could happen to anybody, so back strain, eye strain. We don't need to go into like particular ailments, for example. So just keep it sort of standard for this one. You don't have to go into too much detail or go into any obscure ailments for this one. So that would be enough for this one. Haven't got any more. So second one here, during a photography shoot for BG Star magazine, consideration must be given to health and safety of staff. For each aspect below, identify 1 health and safety risk and 1 method to reduce it. Okay, so this one is the other side of it this time. So we're not looking at our computer users, we're looking at our production crew who are going to be doing it. So in this case, we want to do 1 risk and 1 method to reduce it. So the first thing we're looking at is lighting equipment. So we want to make sure, so this could be our working at heights thing. So make sure that when setting up lighting equipment, that the area around the lights is kept clear to prevent injuries from the lights being dropped. So I mentioned what the injury is, and I said how we can get around it. You could also say to make sure that depending on how high the lights are going, make sure that the person's using the correct safety equipment, so for working at heights so that they don't obviously fall themselves and hurt themselves, which could also happen. And then the second one's power cables. That's all working with electricity. So in this case, let me go back onto here. So this one will be making sure, my M is really dodgy today, making sure that any electrical cables are kept secured and covered to prevent a trip hazard. So I've listed my safety risk, and I've also said how I'm going to get around it. So here's my hazard or my risk, and here is how we're going to mitigate it. So I've done it a different way around to the question, but that's fine. Making sure the content's in there is all that matters. And these are typically the sort of thing you'll get in there. Can vary between about 2 or 4 marks in the exam, but out of 60, obviously that all adds up. So that's one to be aware of. Now we're moving on to scripts. Now, in terms of the exam, scripts are the one thing you won't be asked to produce in an exam. So you could be asked to make a mood board, a mind map, visualization diagram, or storyboard, but you won't be asked to write a script. But you will be asked to identify parts of a script. You may have a script as your 12-mark question. So it is important to know what the purpose of it is, who uses it, and what the content is. So the purpose of a script is to organise potentially the dialogue and the stage direction for a, it could be a audio or an audio visual. So by that I mean it could be a radio jingle, obviously that will need a script, or it could be a film, or it could be a game scene. They will all use scripts. Uses, again, this could be used in games, it could be used in animation, it could be used in film, and it's typically used by people such as the actors, it could be used by the camera crew, it could be used by the director, and these are all questions that you might get asked. So who's going to use it, why we have it? So I know quite a lot of people do drama and iMedia, and that's a really good combination because they tend to have a bit of a head up when it comes to scripts. So let's have a look at content of a script, shall we? Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So these are the things that we need to know about when it comes to scripts. So first of all, set or location. Now this will always be EXT for exterior or INT for interior, and that's all you need to know in that respect. You've also got stage directions, and you'll notice that these are all aligned on the left, and I'll come back to this in a minute because you do need to know about the alignment as well. So in this one, I know that the Roman commander walks out the door towards the viewer. This is useful for the actor, also useful for the director, also useful for the camera crew so they know where people are coming from. Then we've got our camera shot types and movement. So I've got a close-up of the Roman commander here. I've got the cameras flying behind on this next one. Then we have got the scene or the state description. So in this one, I know that although it's exterior, I'm at the front of the Roman villa. And in this one, I know that I'm in the interior of a large room that has got cushions on the floor and a couch. Other things we've got on here, sound effects. So I've got a servant pouring wine into a goblet. That's the sound effects. I might use a Foley artist to do that as well. I've got the names of actors and characters. Now, obviously, I know it sounds a bit kind of self-explanatory, but it's very useful for the actors and characters to know where their lines are in there. So they are on there as well, and also the lines they have to say too, because obviously it wouldn't be very helpful if they didn't have their lines on there. Now you'll notice that the actors and characters and the dialogue are all kind of in the middle and everything else is to the left. That is also really important to know, particularly if you're reviewing it as well. So anything to do with the dialogue or the characters is sort of more in the middle, and everything else is on the left hand side, and I'm going to show you that again in a second. So here's the same script again. Left hand margin, you've got your locations, your camera shot, your directions, etc. And indented, but not necessarily centered, although this one does look centered, but it doesn't have to be centered, it just has to be indented, is our character and actor and any dialogue that they may have. So again, let's move on and have a little look at a typical question for this one. So we've got here a script, and this is again taken from an exam. This one is what my year 11s just did for their mocks actually, so they will be familiar with it. Using the script, identify the following. You've got one location, one camera movement, one non-speaking character, and one user interaction. Now user interaction is a tricky one here, and is one that a few of mine stumbled upon actually, but let's have a look anyway. So I'm going to use my little highlighter again. So let's start with this red one. So one location. So we know our location might be the front of a Roman villa, or it could be the large room with cushions on the floor and a couch. So any of those two will do for our location. Then let's have a look at camera movement. Now the key word here, and unfortunately where some of my lot stumbled upon, is that it says camera movement, not camera shot. So close up is a camera shot, camera fly behind is a camera movement. You've got one non-speaking character. Now, obviously, we know it is not the Roman commander because he speaks here. Command of Vespasian. But we do know further down here, if I look on here, that there is a servant who pours wine, and they do that without speaking. So that would be our non-speaking character. So you just put servant here. You wouldn't have to write the whole line in the exam. It's just identifying it. Now the user interaction. Now this scenario here is taken from the exam paper where they're going to be creating these interactive presentations for users to use on a bus. So the question here is, what is the part of the script where the user is asked to interact with it? And you'll see a little bit further here is that buttons appear on the screen so the user can choose what they want to make, and that's your user interaction. So this is going to be my yellow one here. So the buttons appearing on the screen is the user interaction. So I realise I haven't coloured the rest of these in here. And this is a typical question you will get on scripts. Identifying parts, identifying locations and things like that. But like I said, you won't be asked to write one. So they wouldn't say, here is a story, now write a script for it. So you haven't got to worry about writing a script in the exam. Okay, I think that is all on script. So again, as with all the others, feel free to leave some questions in the comments if you want to. Now, work plans are another one that seem to cause a lot of headaches. And in this case, you may very much be asked to create a work plan. But I actually think these questions are a really good way of getting marks, because they'll always give you all of the information that you need, and you just have to put it into a template. So those are the best questions you can get on work plans. But essentially, the purpose of a work plan is to organise all of the tasks and activities that need to take place to ensure that a product is delivered on time. Who uses that? It tends to be either the client and also the company who's doing it, anyone involved in pre-production. So anyone who's involved in the project will typically need to have access to the work plan to know what they've got to do and when they've got to do it. And in terms of content, that can be broken down, and I'm going to show you again an example on the following page. So here is the content of our work plan. So you have got, and let me use my little pointy thing here, you have got first and foremost tasks. Now tasks are the broken down things that you actually have to do. So in this case we've got storyboard video, source and store music, record around the school and interview people. Now tasks can also be broken down into activities. So I'm just going to do a little sub note here. There aren't any in here, but you could have a task, and then that task could be broken down into sub sort of tasks called activities. So activities are kind of below tasks. So you might have, for example, decide the script or access something to do the storyboard, for example. Now you've got resources. Now resources are the equipment that you need to actually complete that task or activity. So in this case, you've got paper and pencil. It could be computers, it could be software, it could be physical things. So resources can be both physical and digital things that you use to complete the task. So that's resources. And you'll see here we've got this thing called milestone 1 and milestone 2. Now milestones are a way of breaking up your project into manageable chunks that kind of like landmarks of when something needs to be done. So for example, with your R082, you might need to, for example, have a section where you've got all of your research done by, and then a section where you've got all of your actual preparation for your digital graphic done by, and then you might have one for making the graphic, and then you might have one for reviewing the graphic. A little bit like the LOs that you've got, LO1, LO2. You can think of those as the milestones. So milestones are really useful to have, and I do recommend putting them in there if you've got the opportunity in the exam. Then we have got on here the actual task completion. Now there's a number of ways you can do it. This is my preferred way, where you've just got the number of hours. So this is hours along the top here, and then you've obviously got how long you're going to give each section to do. So you can do it by a Gantt chart as well, or you could just write the hours. Sorry, this is a Gantt chart. You could also just write the hours as well down there. So you could say, for example, you could have this label as duration and just have 1 hour, 30 minutes, for example. And as somebody said here, do you always need to add contingency time when drawing a work plan? I recommend, yes, adding contingency time in there, even if you're not planning on using it. The whole point when you have it in there is because typically things do go wrong. I mean, this last 18 months has been an example of when things go wrong. But it's really important to be aware of planning in extra time in case things go wrong. So in this case, they've done it when they are sourcing So they might have built in extra time for sourcing, and they've also built in extra time for recording around the school and interviewing it. It'll typically be during your during your production that you'll need this extra time. So for example, like in my school, traditionally the computers are really slow, so that adds on time when we're actually trying to use Photoshop to create the actual posters. But it could also be due to absence. So it's really, really good to include contingency time on there, even if you're not planning on using it, because that's the whole point. We don't want to use it, but it's there if we need to. So I'm just going to write a quick list here of all of the different elements, because again, a typical question you'll get asked in the exam is to list some elements of a work plan. So you have got tasks, not tax, tasks, activities, you have got milestones, you have got resources, you have got duration, you have got contingency, and have I forgotten anything? I don't think so. I think that's probably there. Okay, yeah, so that is a work plan and everything that goes inside of it. You'll have created, if anyone's already done R082, you'll be familiar with this because you'll have created one for R082. But if not, this is what it might look like. And it's nothing to be worried about. It's quite simple when you get to it. So let's have a look at a question. So here we've got a purpose of a work plan. So a 2-mark question here. So the purpose of a work plan, as I said to you, is to make sure is to break down the tasks required to complete a project on time. Not time. And that is a typical 2-mark question. I know when I write it in, type it, it doesn't look like much of an answer for the boxes. I know. Sorry about that. Family. It doesn't look like that, but obviously when you write that in hand, that will come out a bit longer, because I know when obviously you type it, it looks like I've written nothing, but that would be a 2-mark answer. 3 items that you would be included on a work plan. You could choose any of those things that we just talked about. So you could take your pick here. I'm just going to go for milestones. I'm going to go for contingency, and I'm going to go for resources. Check this question carefully, because sometimes they'll say other than milestones, other than this. So just double check that question just to make sure that you don't lose a mark by putting down something that they've already mentioned. So hopefully that's helped you a little bit when it comes to work plans. I think there's another one I'm just going to show you now, which is where you've got to create one. No, this one's a labelling one. So this was a little while ago we had this one. This is a really nice question because it's only 4 marks, and essentially you just got to look at this and work out what's what. So I'm going to use my little pencil here to draw lines. So label A. So label A here, that would be our task. So you'll see here you've got your sub ones here, which are indented a bit further. They're your activities, but the main sort of headings are your tasks. So A is my task. Put that there. Let's have a look at B. So B is this little dot here, and I am going to hazard a guess. I'm assuming there would have been a key somewhere in the exam, but this will likely be your contingency. Nope, contingency is not there. That's brilliant. What is B? Oh, B must be your milestones then, I'm guessing. I'm guessing B's a milestone. That is very interesting. Okay, we'll come back to that one for a second. And then C is our activities, as we said here. So we've got activities, which is here, because that is the where you further broken down. So for example, the actual task is to record the voiceover, and your sub activities in there is you've got to write a script, record the actor, and edit it. And then we've got D, and D is our timescale. So D is our timescale, which means that, okay, so it's going to have to be a milestone because it's not resources, because it didn't tell you anything. So I'm going to say that it is a milestone, and that somewhere on this exam question there'd have been a key on here to tell you that. So I'm going to go for milestones. Voila. And that's 4 marks. Nice easy one, that one. Let's hope we get something like that in the exam. But the other one you might have, of course, is where you've actually got to write in. So they tell you all the information. So my year 11s, again, have just done this recently as part of a mock. So we have got all of the information here. Life in Rome, Britain project is a travelling exhibit that will visit primary schools using a lorry and a bus. And at each school it will be set up with the banners outside, welcome them in. Inside the back of the lorry there will be 2 rooms, the Roman villa, the Roman barracks, and there'll be 2 floors. The top floor with a presentation and the bottom floor. Now this is the key information here, and this is what you need to actually do the work plan. So it needs to start visiting schools in October, but it needs to be tested before it starts visiting the schools, and that takes 1 month. Each floor and each room will take 2 months. We can only allocate a small team, so each of the floors and rooms must be completed before the next one can be started. So you can do this in a number of ways. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a task called project timeline. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller as well. Okay, so project timeline. Oh, not keep my tie. Project timeline. There we go. Let's make this on here, and then we might have to. Let's start with the Roman villa, because that's one of the rooms, and I might do the Roman barracks. Oh no, fit that on one line. Okay, so these are all of my tasks. Then I might have the top floor, and then I've got the bottom floor. Can't get this to line up properly. Bottom floor, and then I've got testing here. Let me try if I can shimmy that down a little bit. Oh gosh. Right, so the project timeline itself, it all needs to be done by the end of September. So I'm just going to draw a little box here. Now obviously in an exam you would obviously draw this on pencil, but your project timeline is from here to here. Then your Roman villa, so I'm going to start that. That's going to take 2 months to do. So that's going to go here. Oh my goodness, no, it's not going to go there. I thought it would just let me draw another box, but apparently not. Right, let's draw another one. Here we go. Yep, thank you very much. Okay, then I've got 2 months to do this one, and I have got then 2 months. So remember, they can't overlap, because it already says on here that they must be completed before the next one can be started. So I can't overlap these. Then I might do the top floor, which again is going to take another 2 months. Yeah, that's fine. And let's go down here. And then I've got the bottom floor, which again is going to take another 2 months, and can't overlap with the previous one. And then I have got a testing, which already says on here is going to take a month. So that's going to take another one. And then I could, if I wanted to, put something on here saying go live or launch at school or something like that. And that is genuinely it. And I think this question was worth 7 marks. So it was a really nice way of getting some marks in the exam, because all the information is given to you. You've just got to extract it. So there you go. So you've got all your tasks down here, as taken from here. You've got your timeline here, so your overall timeline for the project. Your Roman villa, your Roman barracks, your top floor, your bottom floor, each taking 2 months and not overlapping. And then you've got your testing, which takes 1 month. Really nice way of doing this. Okay, so we're coming towards the end now. I know it's been a long, how long are we into it? Almost an hour in already. My goodness. Now, target audience. I was quite surprised that my lot chose this one as one of the ones I needed help with, because it's one that we've done quite a lot. But essentially, your target audience is a way of classifying all of the people in the world into a group of people who you want to use your product. And they can be categorized in a number of ways. One of those being by age, one of those being by gender, one of those being by location, and one of those being by ethnicity. And in an exam, you're typically going to be asked a number of questions based on how might you give an example of how you categorize people by age, or give 2 other ways other than gender of how you can categorize an audience, something along those lines. So that's typical. So you need to be aware of these categories, and you need to also be aware of how to group people within those categories. So age, people tend to typically give really large age ranges when they're doing target audience. Be as specific as possible. I would say roughly, if you can help it, about like 5-year bands, because some people, so a classic example here is R082. Now my lot are doing the book cover, and for the book cover some of them said, oh well, my book's suitable for children, so I'm going to do it from 2 to 16. Now I don't know about you, but when I was 2, I was not reading the same books that I was when I was 16. So that age group isn't going to work, because how are you going to make something that's going to appeal to a 2-year-old, but also to a 16-year-old? So you need to be really clear when you're doing your boundaries for ages. Now, also as you get older, that's a little bit easier to do, because typically once you get to a certain age groups, that gets a little bit broader. But definitely when you're doing anything to do with children, you need to be very tight and specific. So if you were doing a preschool book, you could do, for example, 2 to 5-year-olds. If you were doing I don't know, something for university students, you might do 16 to 22 to kind of cover either end of that as well. But you see how these are really tight age bands. Now gender is a little bit easier to do. So for gender, you have got obviously traditional topics such as male and female. But also you need to be aware of things such as transgender, etc. Of course, transgender, etc. So things to be aware of in there as well. Thank you to that person who just left a comment there. These are not the exact topics that will be on there. So essentially, this is a list of topics that my year 11s have identified as areas that they would like extra help on. What I can do is I will leave for you in the description below at the end of this live stream a little list of all the topics that could come up, and I've given my year 11s some places to go to practice those. Now I know for some exams like I think English, etc., they're giving you the topics. Unfortunately for iMedia, they're not. They've essentially let you drop a coursework unit, but they're not giving us the topics. But hopefully this will help a little bit. Most of these are guaranteed to come up in the exam anyway. Like target audience, there'll always be a question on that. Typically there's a question on work plan, so it's certainly not going to hurt to do it, put it that way. Okay, so location. For iMedia, location is categorized in 3 different ways. You need to know local, national, and international. Now, what I mean by that is your local farmer's shop is probably going to advertise to people within the local area, but they're probably not going to advertise their meat to people living in Japan, for example, because you're not going to come to, all the way over to the UK to this local farm shop just to get some meat. But on the flip side, the Olympics, they are going to be international. So obviously anything to do with the Olympics are going to be marketed across the world. So it's just being mindful of where and how you're going to advertise your products to get to the right people. And then ethnicity. Now, ethnicity is quite a broad topic, actually, and it can be anything to do with like a characteristic of a group of people. So it could be race, it could be religion, it could be language, etc. So any groupings in that respect would come under this. And another one that's not on here, I did take this from the textbook, but also you've got things such as income. Now, a classic one on this one would be think of supermarkets. If you're in an affluent area where you've got lots of money, you are going to be if you're the local corner shop, you're probably going to advertise products that are a little bit more kind of higher premium cost. Whereas if you are got a corner shop that's in a really poor, like poverty stricken area, then you're probably going to advertise products that are cheaper and are going to appeal to those people, because obviously if you do both the other way, you're not going to get the right people coming in. So if you're advertising really expensive products in a really poor area, nobody's going to buy them because they can't afford them. So income's a really important thing to think about as well. And that's it for target audience, and it's just being mindful of making sure you're specific and making sure that you're thinking about who the end user is, who you want to actually use your product. So let's have a look at an exam question for this, shall we? So we've got Zeta Level here launching a new construction toy based on building blocks. It's to be on sale in the lead up to Christmas. You've been asked to create pre-production documents for a promotional campaign which will use TV, radio and internet. So it's a construction toy using building blocks. Here we go. This is being done for preschool age, so preschool under 5. And it was going to be promoted on the internet using digital graphics. Oh my goodness, sorry, that one a little bit wavy there. Explain one way in which the age of the target audience will affect the colours used. Okay, so you're thinking here about what colours are going to appeal to under 5s. This should be nice and simple here. So it's going to be, it's a 2-mark question. Let me get my colouring here. So you will need to make sure you will need to use bright primary colour. Oh god, I can't spell. Primary colours to attract the attention of, goodness me, of the preschool children. But also, don't forget the parents as well, because parents are going to be the ones buying it ultimately. So it needs to be appealing in that respect as well. You might also argue that you want to do soft pastel colours. You might use soft pastel colours to appeal to preschool children. So as long as you can kind of back up or validate what you're doing, that's absolutely fine. And that's a very typical target audience question. I'm not sure if I put another one in here. I did. So this is again another classic one where you've got a scenario. So this one, you've got a wide target audience of 12 to 50, because it's all to do with like environmental issues. They're going to be showing several short films to explain environmental issues. They're going to be shown on various websites, and 2 aspects other than age of the target audience. So again, this one's a classic trap one. Don't mention age. So how else can you classify an audience other than age? That's any of those other categories we spoke about earlier. So it could be gender. It could be, I'm going to put this all in one line, location. It could be ethnicity. It could be income. Anything other than age will be fine here. And that's, again, a really nice, easy question on there. All right, so we're coming up to the end now. We're coming up to the 12-mark question. Now, controversially here, I always suggest to my groups that they do this question first. So read the scenario, because the exam's always going to be based on a scenario. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Where's my exam paper from earlier? So whenever you do an iMedia exam, you will always be given at the very beginning this. This is the scenario, and that scenario stays with the exam the whole way through. So it's always going to be based on that campaign. There'll always be some product or something or a scenario happening. So read that so you know what the campaign is, and then skip past all of these questions and then go straight to the 12-mark question. Why do I suggest you that? Well, you've got an hour and 15 minutes to do this exam, and I don't want you to lose 12 marks, which are quite easy to get. And I say that because the whole exam's out of 60, and 12 marks is a big chunk of that. And if you're still fresh and sort of like, you know, not too buckled down by all the other questions, then you can go in with a clear head and just really quickly smash out that 12-mark question and then go back. So my recommendation to you is always do the 12-mark question first. And it's always going to follow the same routine as well. That's the other reason why I think it's such an easy way to get 12 marks, because it's always the same format. You're going to get given one of the 5 pre-production documents. You're going to have to state the suitability of it, tell me some strengths, tell me some weaknesses, and tell me some improvements. And the document will always have some good things about it and some bad things about it. So here's the breakdown. I mean, this isn't by the example, but this is how I structure the 12 marks. 2 marks for suitability. So what is the purpose of the document you're reviewing, and how suitable is it for the intended audience? They'll always tell you who this document is going to be given to, and you must mention that in your answer. Then 4 marks for listing 2 strengths and telling me why they're a strength for the audience. Then I would like you to give me 2 weaknesses and why they're a weakness for the audience. So you see they're kind of like linked together. And then lastly, suggest an improvement or more. And then again, tell me why that will help the intended audience. So let's have a look at this, shall we? So we have got this one here. So it's a storyboard, and this is the exact question. So several short 30-second films will be made to explain each of the environmental issues facing the planet. Figure 3 is a draft. Figure 3 is a draft of the storyboard. It will be given to the camera crew. So the audience in this question is the camera crew. So all of our strengths and weaknesses are about how suitable it is for the camera crew who are going to create the film. So all of our strengths and weaknesses need to be why it's a problem or a strength for them. So I'm going to add a slide here. Let me take a snip of this, because then I can take this with me. Okay, so let's see if this works. Can I take this onto a new slide with me? Can I? No, we can't. Okay. That's a bit annoying. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, in fact. I'm going to skip over to this, because then I can do this in the PDF editor. I'll add this into the other system I was using in a second. Let me move this tablet out of the way. Okay, so the first thing I tell my guys to do is to do a little table just on pencil with some strengths and weaknesses. And in fact, let me show you. I can do that on here, actually, what this will look like. Right, let me delete that. Please delete that. Honestly, I don't know why it's... Oh, it will let me copy it. There we go. Right, I copied it now. Here we go. No, why don't we paste it? I don't know. It's been a right pickle. Nope, doesn't want to do it, does it? Well, I don't know what the point of copy is. Right, let me... Deary me. Going from bad to worse here, isn't it? Let me move this out of the way. So I'm going to suggest... I'm going to zoom out here as well. That we zoom out a little bit. Whee! Please let me zoom out. Oh, goodness me. There we go. Finally. Okay. You come out of the way as well. So what I tend to do, in fact, this might work quite well actually, if I can just push this out the side. So you're going to start just by doing a little table with some strengths and some weaknesses. So strengths are, it has images. I know that sounds a bit simple, but the images are there and it's going to be helpful to the camera crew. So it has images. Another strength is that it is it's got some useful annotations and in the section under there. So it has useful, oh my goodness me. What is wrong with me? I don't know why I can't type. That's really not helpful. Go away. I want to edit this one. Okay, I'll just type that again. Has useful information in, oh dear me, such as location. So there's all the location and camera shots. Okay, so there's some strengths. Let me whiz that down. What is it doing? Thank you. Goodness me. I don't know why this is so complicated to use. Okay, so there's my strengths. Ignore that rogue H on there. Oh, look, now it's working. And then I'm going to go on and do my weaknesses. So I'm going to put these on the other side. Weaknesses. What does it not have? So this is all about testing your knowledge of what the content is for a storyboard, and it will be the same regardless of the document it is. So weaknesses. There's no numbering on here. So for example, I do not know whether it goes this way. So 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, 6, or if it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to put weaknesses. The shots are not numbered. Also, looking around here in my description, I do not know how long each of these needs to be filmed for. So there are no durations on here. And there's a really quick way. So then I've got on the paper there already, just in a little short form. And it literally, for my, I've seen, you know, I've marked the papers of mine that do it. And you'll see they just literally do like a little thing like this. And they'll do S, and then they'll do W, and then they'll just literally write them down, just scribble them on there before they then start talking about it in detail. So it's a really nice way to just get your head straight before you start writing. So let's move this out of the way. Oh, wrong one. Let's move this out of the way a second. There we go. All right, so I'm now going to use this as my template to write the 12 mark answer. Let's see how we get on with this. Probably not very well. So you're always going to start with what it is. So the storyboard in figure 3, to be given to the camera crew to create the film. I know it sounds like you're kind of like repeating it. And then you're going to say how suitable it is. Is somewhat suitable. And then you're just going to then launch into your whys. Okay. So I typically keep it strengths, then do weaknesses, and do improvement. My hint to you would be just to keep it as clear as possible. So some of mine have a habit of sort of weaving a story where they talk about some strengths and then maybe like mix in a weakness. Your aim is to keep this as simple as possible for the examiner to give you 12 marks. And it is the only question in the exam where you will get marks based on your use of grammar and English and punctuation. So do take time. This is why I suggest doing it first when your head's still a bit clearer at the beginning of the exam. So I'm going to start by saying one strength of the storyboard is that it includes pictures. And then you're going to again state the audience. This is helpful for the camera crew so they know what each shot should look like. Okay, that's 2 marks. Okay, boom, done. Right, that's our first one done. Right, has useful information. Okay, I'm going to say another strength of the storyboard is the inclusion of the locations. This will be helpful to the camera crew so they know where each shot is to be filmed. And there you go. So this is already 6 marks, just like that. So a really, really simple way of getting those marks in there. So I've mentioned what the strength is. I've mentioned that it's the camera crew, and I've said why it's a strength. So I've validated and explained why. So now I'm going to go on to my negatives. And then I'm going to say, however, on the other side, the shots on the storyboard are not numbered. this might cause confusion to the camera crew. Again, mentioning that camera crew every time, because they might not know which order to film the shots in. Okay, really easy. I've stated what it is. I've then gone on to talk about why it's an issue. Okay, so let's go on to the second weakness. A further weakness is the lack of duration for each shot. The camera crew won't know whether to film these for 1 or 30 seconds. Okay, obviously we know the whole thing's 30 seconds, but does that mean each one's 5 seconds? Does that mean one's 5 and another one's 10 and another one's 1, or whatever? So that's why it's a weakness. That's why it's on there. So you'll see this is actually testing that you know what should go onto a storyboard and what the problem is if it's not there. And you do this if it was a mood board, you do this if it was a mind map, you do it if it was a script, etc. And then lastly, we're going to go into areas for improvement. So to improve this storyboard, I would ensure that there is enough information provided to allow the camera crew to know what they need to shoot, in what order, and for how long. By doing this, it will speed up the production time for the camera crew and ease any confusion. And you can obviously go on longer if you want to, but you don't have to. That's essentially all of the key parts on here. So that is our 12 mark question, just like that. And it'll always be that format, and it'll always be those 2 strengths, those 2 weaknesses of the improvement. So like I say, that's why I always tell mine to focus on it, because it's a really easy way to get some marks. So let's go back to the beginning now. Though I'm not going to start all over again, but I just wanted to summarize for you what we have gone through today. So we have covered some file formats, so audio, images, video, and animation. We talked about legislation. We talked a little bit about health and safety. We talked a little bit about scripts, work plans, target audience, and then lastly we've touched on the 12 mark question. I've also showed you where you can get the exam papers from, and I'm going to post that link at the bottom of the in the description bit once I've finished, along with that checklist of all the topics that we might cover in the exam as well. So before I let you all go, and thank you to those of you who have been adding comments as we go through, has anyone got any last questions about what might be covered in the exam, or any worries about anything that's going to come up that I can sort of cover before you go and enjoy the rest of your afternoon? If you have, feel free to put them into the comments now. Otherwise, feel free to leave them as a comment afterwards, and I can always come back and do a short on how to cover that as well. So I'll just wait to see if anybody posts anything. I don't think there's any questions, which is good. Hopefully that means you're all happy and covered everything. Okay, I'm going to take that as there's no more. It's been a long hour and 15 minutes. So thank you so much to those of you who have participated today. And like I said, if there's anything that I haven't covered that you feel like you would like to know before the exam next week, please do leave it in a comment. I'm happy to produce another video, like a one-off, just like I did with the storyboards one, or jump on, do another live at some point. So have a wonderful rest of the day. For those of you who are back to school tomorrow or earlier in this week, have a lovely first week back. I hope you've had a nice break and you're feeling very refreshed, and I will see my lot on Wednesday, or some of them tomorrow actually, for the other group. But yeah, have a lovely rest of the week and good luck. No, thank you very much. Take care. Bye.